Hello. I'm making another video. We're going back tomorrow because we have to take care of business, and so we talked things through in peace about the political situation and how to make investments and what not to invest in, and all of these things and all of these dangers, so obviously putting money into the bank is going to become more and more risky and unstable. Investing in cash is even more unstable because the dollar can suddenly disappear, and then it'll be worthless, and then what are you going to do with all the cash? So you can invest into silver coins or gold coins, but I personally don't feel comfortable about that because I don't know very much about silver coins and gold coins. I don't know how to pay attention to whether they are not remade, refabricated with whatever, something else inside. So chocolate on the inside, right? So yeah, I mean that I would be able to see, but no, I would not be able to detect whether that has been forged, or whether that is coming from the mafia, or I don't know. I don't want to invest in something that might be tricky. And also, gold and silver mining is highly unethical, so I'd rather stay away from it. If the ETs came here, they would do all of that in a sustainable way, in an earth-friendly way, and that's what I want to talk about in this video. So, I like Cambodia, and Paul said, "Oh, that's communist." I look on YouTube, I watch Cambodia videos, and these people are very happy there, and a lot of people from the United States moved to Cambodia because they said it's much safer there, it's stricter, it's not woke, it's better for investors to start a business, and so on. More stable economy, stable currency. They're smarter there, they're friendly, they're polite, they are welcoming to foreigners. And the most important, there is the eighth wonder of the world, and that is called Angkor Wat. And Angkor Wat is an ET settlement, believe it or not. I know you're not going to believe it. Most people will not believe that. But I do. I believe it because it defies any kind of current knowledge, and it certainly defies all the current knowledge at that time when they built that, which was about 10,000 years ago, or even further back. Okay, so there are hieroglyphs or petroglyphs that are carvings into rock that are actually indicating that the settlement is even older than that, because I don't know if this is some kind of trick or if people have added that, in recent years, secretly carved that into it in order to sell their exciting videos or whatever. But they found archaeologists, they should probably know whether that's an ancient carving or a modern carving made by current people that are just putting that in there in order to mislead the public, right? And I was very skeptical for many, many, many years, but they did find a Stegosaurus engraved into those petroglyphs, and many other animals that have gone extinct a long time ago, even saber-toothed tigers and certain giant tigers and like beginnings of tigers when they first evolved, and other animals that people only know from petrified bones, fossils. So that and then they did reconstruction, and then they figured that this is approximately how this animal must have looked like. But the ancients have carved a Stegosaurus in there, which is a dinosaur that has these triangular spikes on the back, all the way along the back, and then going down also into the tail. So along the spinal cord, and the spinal cord is extended through the tail. So then the spikes get really large on top of the dinosaur. And then they get smaller towards the neck, and then they get smaller towards the tip of the tail. And they're kind of bulky shaped, and real big trunk, a big torso, and large head also, with very large piercing teeth that come out, and all of that. A very clear, crystal clear depiction of a dinosaur, of the Stegosaurus, and they lived 100 million years ago, or something like that. I'm just guessing now, but like 100 million years ago. So now if that is the case, then humans did not exist yet. Okay. And human evolution was, if you go 100 million years back, the human evolutionary lineage, which goes back to the first amoeba. But if we go that far back, then you have the very rudimentary beginnings of what will later become something that is on our lineage, right? A lemur or something, or a tree climbing animal. So if you go that far back, 100 million years back, the animal, our ancestor at that time, was very small, was probably like this small. And it was a dinosaur, right? A little toy dinosaur, okay? That was on our lineage, okay? Which then later, if you stay strictly on this lineage, as you follow, if we can do something like this where we look back through some kind of machine that will show us in detail how it branches off and everything, okay, the exact lineage, then we can from my estimate, right, because I don't know the exact lineage. But if I'm doing a rough estimate on it, you go back and you look at this lineage and follow the lineage, how it evolves. There are always side branches all the time, all through, right? And from these side branches, then other animals branch off and evolve, including dogs and wolves and whales and all of that, right? But if you follow the human lineage, you go back 100 million years in time, you have the dinosaurs, the large dinosaurs, and there's a little dinosaur, itty bitty little dinosaur, reptile, okay? They were all called dinosaurs at that time, so during the Jurassic. But a little dinosaur, a little reptile, that would later on then seek refuge in caves, lots and lots of caves, and also start growing hair. These things evolve very, very gradually. And the ones with the hair that they're a little bit more equipped to stay warm, and that the blue god agrees with me on this. 1, 1, 1, 1. That's the truth. So it must be the truth, okay? But obviously, nothing in nature, wherever you go, you can go to the Orion Nebula, you can go to planet Love, or here on Earth, nothing in nature, anywhere you go, is strictly linear. Okay, and that's the universal law, that there is no linearity in anything. Okay, so, and evolution itself is not linear, but our evolution was certainly not linear in the Darwinian sense. So that's what I believe now, because I see evidence of this, and it gets very, very wild, trust me, as I get deeper into this material, because I wanted to make one video just for this subject, because I have been watching a lot of what Carl Paul's E.T. people videos. So for him, it's all goes into the drawer E.T. and that's it. It's forgotten and over with. It is behind the doors of the insane asylum. Okay, so for him. But, I'm not going to talk to him about it, because it has no sense anyway. Because he's obviously not interested even. He's not even interested to hear it. I watch different videos from different people, but this one channel, Universe Inside You, these people, they give very, very accurate and very precise documentation on all these different and they're not selective. They look at everything, okay, very carefully. They don't dismiss something because that might be put into the ET file and then closed case. They keep an open mind with everything, and they seem to be also convinced of that stuff. But the way they present this, it seems very convincing, But I'm not only watching their videos. I also watch videos from archaeologists and professors and scientists from around the world. So because it's very interesting to me. So that they are, and then maybe some of them they get very scared that they are gonna be shunned by the scientific community if they're not gonna completely stay linearly on the course of scientific acknowledgement and acceptance. But that's, the scientific acceptance thing people need to get over that, because, even if your funds are withdrawn, you need to stay scientifically correct. And that means you have to be open-ended. You cannot close the door here and say, oh no, this is too much into the ET direction or into the paranormal. We're going to close the door here. Okay, that's a mistake. Because if people continue to do this, tread on that path, and then they get to the point with their research where they just reach the end of the road, right? A dead end or an open end or a road that ends there, that just goes into a completely wild, uncharted territory. And they just, instead of going further, they just make a U-turn and come back. And when asked, they say, I don't know what's behind that or what's after this or what extrapolation leads to go further or something. And I find that unscientific, and it's a mistake to do that, to be unopen-minded. So you have to be open-minded, but you have to pursue this, obviously, in a very meticulous, precise, and very scientific and very scholarly way, in a very serious way. You can't be smuggling a dinosaur petroglyph into it in order to make your case, right? Because it's more exciting or whatever. So, no. But I don't believe that someone put this in there later. It looks ancient, It looks like it is one of these animals that have been carved into that one wall. So when you see something like this, that raises a lot of questions, obviously, And that's not the only thing that raises a lot of questions. So how did the ancients, particularly when it goes that far back, how did they know any of these, of anything about that far advanced science and technology? Like if you go 10,000 years back, they didn't know very much. That was the Stone Ages. They barely knew how to carve something or how to make tools out of broken rocks or make arrowheads, right, for their hunting and all of that. So they didn't know how to create very elaborate aquifers underground that are like 100 stories deep and something like this. So, and then the common overall consensus in science, it does go back to like 1,000 years back in time, right? So they agree that it is at least that old. So people, not 10,000 years back. So if they agree on that, then they have to ask the question if it goes at least that far back, which they have estimated with current time evaluation tools and technology, with certain mineral dating techniques and so on, and carbon dating techniques, where they can approximately pinpoint to the age that this formation comes from, or where a fossil comes from, when they still find some carbon molecules that are embedded into it, or when they find, for example, they find a rock material that is broken up that totally goes against anything that they have ever known about rocks, right? And they look into it and they find polyester type of carbomers, as they call it. So, like plastic carbon type of molecules. And then they don't know how that possibly got into it. Particularly if that's evenly distributed within the rock structure, then it's not like suddenly there was the remains of an insect in it, and that sort of fell apart, and then you have only a cluster of that in one spot. It's so evenly distributed in some of these rocks that they find where they don't know what it is. They cannot find out what these rocks are. And I saw this from other channels also from the scientific community approved of channels. So, but these people then they're open-ended. They don't know how the story continues and how this can be explained, right? But there's one professor, a geologist from Chile, I believe he is, or Bolivia, who has really, really gone deeper than other scientists, but always with an open mind, but he already knows where the other people are going to take this. So he's already a little bit irritated about it. And they all already have, that's what I noticed about geologists. They all seem to, when they make their case, almost like a forensic investigator who makes their case in court. They're already a little bit on edge. They're a little bit irritated because they already know if they just tread a little further in this or that direction, they're going to be accused of being a flying saucer proponent or something. And that guy, he also said that. I read the translation, so he was speaking in Spanish. I read the translations throughout an entire hour of very meticulous presentation, and the best presentation I've ever seen from a geologist. Very, very accurate research that they have done. They didn't leave anything untouched. They also looked at the history. And he said, so the estimation of particularly this one place, Pumapunku, which is way up in the Andes Mountains, which he has been researching. They have these cement blocks there that look like they come from a modern construction site. They come from something that has only recently been created. But if you look closer, you see that this is not recent. Okay, this is obviously very old. And they have taken a chip of some of these blocks, and they have pulverized it, and they have done they first put it under certain radars to see into the rock, and then later they also pulverized it in order to really determine the kind of chemicals that are in it. And what he found was, he was very, very, very amazed about what they found. He comes to the conclusion that this is actually a cast, that this is what they call a rock polymer. This is a cement, a form of cement that is very old. But the time that they have approximately estimated it, and that they're all agreeing on, that it is at least, I think they said 9,000 years back in time. So the people there at that time, 9,000 years ago, they did not have any cement mixing technology at all. But he researched it all, and he said this is all that he can say about this, and he's not going to make any speculations on it. He says, so it's at least that old, and in the very end he said, you have to come to your own conclusions with this, because he's also investigated the migration of the people during that time and the kind of practices they had about of trade routes and all of this. And so he came to the point where he says, yeah, this could have been, they could have taken some water from the ocean and some from the river, and they could have put some plant materials into it and so on, in order to create just the right cement that pours well without too many air holes in it, and that hardens very fast. Okay, so, and I just personally cannot imagine that the people at that time could figure something like this out of that scale, and also create cast forms, molds that are that large, and they must have had enormous containers to mix that cement up, and then what you see in high-rise building construction. They have these large containers that rotate and that are mixing up the cement. Okay. And then it pours out in massive amounts. They didn't have that technology at that time. So how did this all come into the development as it evolved? How can something like this possibly come into existence? So I'm thinking about this, and I'm absolutely amazed about all of this. And they found one rock in Africa that also seems to be a rock polymer of some sort. And that completely, the scientists could not, chemists that investigated this in Europe, I think in Amsterdam, there was a scientist that investigated that stone rock. No, the sky stone. That's what they call it. That's what the natives call it also. And the natives have their story to it. And the story goes that there was a spaceship that came down in Africa, that landed there, and the remains of that spaceship are lots and lots of these broken up pieces of light bright blue rock. The sky stone that they call. And it's very light, and it's extremely heat resistant. It's fire resistant, and it's unbreakable. It's like for normal wear and tear, and for even using that as a spacecraft material. So almost unbreakable. But over time it must have, at some point, it must have splintered apart. Or the spacecraft has crashed. That could be too. So I don't know. But there are lots and lots of those stories that come together with the material that cannot be explained by scientists. And so it raises a lot of questions, those kind of things. Puma Punku in the Andes Mountains, that's definitely for me personally, that's the most enigmatic and most amazing ancient site that I have ever seen. So that is so incredibly amazing, and the reason why it's eerie, because it looks like it comes from a modern construction site. That's why. While, for example, Angkor Wat in Cambodia, when you look at those structures, they look very, very Hindu ornamental and very old. They have some, almost looks like there's some kind of organic moss or something growing on the surface. Very weathered, very dark, and very ornamental and very ancient. So my first idea would not be that this was built by ETs from the way it looks. But if you look at Puma Punku, it does raise a lot of questions about this. And when they say it's that old, how can the ancient people at that time build something that looks extremely modern for today's standards, with a cement that not even today's standards of construction and cement creation has never been invented yet. So, because there were comments from construction workers and architects underneath that video, a lot of professionals in those professions have commented under that video. Very interesting discussion. And the construction workers, they said that they wish they had a cement like this. They don't even have a cement like this today. So where does this type of cement come from? And how can the ancient people in the Andes Mountains 10,000 or 9,000 years ago possibly create something like this when they don't have the current knowledge and all of that? So much of, thousands and thousands and thousands of years of information have to go into this, and trial and error and finding out just the right combination of particles that are going into it, and the speed of the cement drying and the pouring effect, and avoiding air bubbles, and all of these kind of things that go into cement work. And I have worked with clays. I have worked with kaolins and bentonite clays in terms of making pottery. And I learned the hard way that if you don't poke holes with sticks into it, or with knitting needles into the bottom all the way to the top, and many holes, right? If you don't do that, then you have a very increased risk of air bubbles that are inside of the clay that have formed themselves through you netting it. And when that goes into the firing oven, then, because that heats up to, thousands of degrees, right? They really harden this terracotta. And when it goes up to those high degrees, when there are air bubbles inside of that sculpture that you made, then the air that is inside of the sculpture heats up. The air that's inside of the bubble heats up so high that the air will expand almost like a bomb, and it will break the entire sculpture. and it will not only break my sculptures, but the sculptures of everyone else's sculpture that happens to be in that oven and in that moment. Okay. And so people got mad at me in the past, and they said, your sculptures, because they're so fat and bulky, they have air bubbles in it and they explode, and then they damage all the other people's fine pottery that they did with a pottery wheel and all of that. And I felt bad about that. I didn't know, I was clueless, I didn't know what to do, until finally someone told me, where was that? In LA, I think someone told me that you have to stick a knitting needle or something into it. You have to poke holes into it that go all the way through that sculpture. And several, like, I had to poke like 40 holes into it, one next to the other. And I could feel it, that I was hitting some air bubbles in it. It would make farting sounds. So, and when I did that, and I put it back into the firing oven, then it did not explode. So, that's what happens when you're working with clays. There are air bubbles forming. And even if you do a cast of, let's say, whatever, gypsum cast or some kind of rock pulverization or silica or bentonite clay mix or whatever, do a cast of that, and then you get a sculpture through that, then probably there are not as many air holes as netting it, but there are still air bubbles in it. And when you pull the sculpture out, sometimes there are air bubbles right at the bottom of the mold, towards the mold. So when you pull it out, you can see indentations in the sculpture which come from air bubbles that were created. Because there's oxygen inside of the material, and that can get trapped and so on. And that's the art of cement making. I mean, a lot of knowledge has to really go into it. And these H blocks that you see at the ancient site of Pumapunku, if you watch a documentary film on it, which I highly recommend you to do, you can see that these H blocks, they look very, very modern. They look like they come from a modern construction site. And they have 100 of those H blocks that are 5 feet tall and 4 feet wide or something. And enormously heavy blocks. And they were not carved, that because they're all identical, like they were casted. And that's what the scientists from Bolivia found out, that those are casts, and then some other people claim that they were not casts, but that they did. I don't know how they measured this, but sometimes there may even be there may be other factors that play in why one of the H blocks may have, I don't know, maybe more squished together or something. Maybe the cast didn't come out right, or there are other factors that play into it, but I'm absolutely certain that they were not carved out of a granite, that this is a cement polymer that was cast. And I believe that the casting molds were actually from a more advanced civilization. And where does this advanced civilization come from? No other than from another planet, right? And they come here and they bring their entire equipment, the cement, mixing equipment. So they have to come with a very, very large spaceship. They come with all of these things. And if you research these things, and if you get more into it, and you get more into researching space missions and space mission necessities of what they have to bring and how they have to create the first homes on another planet, then you will see, like from Elon Musk's Mars terraforming videos that are out there, that they are going to, that he's already laid it all out, the plan on how this has to be done. And he thinks the most efficient way to do it is through a 3D printing process where they create their own cement from the planet they go to, because all planets are made out of stardust and out of rock formations. Okay, very similar to Earth and Mars and Moon. So that's obvious. They all are consisting of some combinations of rock formations. And so they bring their equipment there, they mine their mining equipment, and they have pulverization machines, industrial. They create their own cement, and then they do 3D printing in the case of Elon Musk, what he is planning on doing. So it comes out like a toothpaste, and then is applied gradually in a large circle or oval shaped or rectangular, and then it gets all the way put on this cement all the way in snake forms, all the way to the top roof, and that seems to be a very, very solid and very strong, also wind resistant structure. So he thought this all through. So, but if there's another civilization and they want to have it in specific, they want to have very, very specific shapes. Like, let's say they have a very much of an affinity to certain squarish shapes, like I have, the squarish cement shapes, and they want to make building blocks out of that, then they will probably bring a mold and then create a cement on the planet they go to, mix it up, and then cast it into the mold, and then it comes out of the mold in the perfect block that they wanted to have in this particular shape that the mold has been made into, in order to have that block that comes out with this particular angle and these indentations of rectangular angles and so on. And so if they just do a 3D printing, then it might not come out in this particular shape that they like, or it will look more like a beehive, something like this. But if they're very advanced, then they can do this. They have those type of molds, that they can bring with them. So yeah, and then there are ancient telltales and ancient word to mouth, mouth to ear telltales that people have brought all the way to the current population. And so there was this one guy, Greek guy I think he is, he went over there to the Andes Mountains, and he interviewed some of these native people there from the Andes Mountains. And one guy, an older guy, he was able to tell this story that there were other civilizations that came there, and it's very hard to climb up on those type of mountains, and a spaceship can come there very easily and land on one of those plateaus. And then they don't even have to go hike down there with 100 people and go through enormous trouble of bringing these cement blocks back up, or dragging cement or stone in order to make that cement. It doesn't really add up, if scientists want to stick with the story of the ancient people, that the natives that lived there, how they can possibly have created those age blocks. So I don't believe this, but it doesn't make too much sense. I believe the E.T. story, because that makes a whole lot more sense. Even though it has been stigmatized by society, I say this and I feel funky saying this, because we have been shamed into never talking about ETs. Yeah, the whole planet has been shamed into this, and that's sad. But to me it makes sense. Okay, it makes sense that they were ET civilizations that came down there, and why shouldn't they? Why should this not happen? And as Enrico Fermi said, that the astrophysicist from Italy, he said that when they are very advanced civilizations, they come in peace. They don't come here to destroy anyone or something. But they're going to have to protect themselves, so they have to build a fortress like that one at Angkor Wat, for example. It is an ET settlement fortress. A fortress of epic proportions, unbelievably large stone blocks also, and amazing, absolutely amazing. This spans of an area of hundreds of miles even. It's huge, and a humongous complex where there are several of these fortresses on that particular complex. And then the human population is banned towards the outskirts, because they have to protect themselves also with an enormous, what they call a moat, which is a square layout of an artificial river that is created, a square river that surrounds these fortresses in order to protect themselves. You can also see that with human architecture from history hundreds of years back, or even 1,000 years or 2,000 years back. You can see that as well, that people like to create an artificial river around their complex in order to protect themselves. Or sometimes there was a ditch that would go all the way around a castle. Okay, and they did this in order to prevent troops from riding their horses up directly to their fortress and to their enclosures and doors and so on. So they like to have these artificial ditches around it, and then they would have a bridge that they can actually lift up and bring back to the castle. So, and that is something that a lot of cultures have used, obviously. And why not ET cultures? Why should they not come up with that as well, and they don't even need to learn that from each other. It's just something that makes sense, right? It's for any kind of civilization or community that wants to protect itself from the outside world, from dangerous animals or dangerous humans, dangerous natives, and so on. So, but some of the natives were not dangerous, and some of them were willing to help them and work with them and learn from them and all of that. So, and they did. They taught them. They taught those that were willing to learn. So I think this is all very, very fascinating and interesting. And Angkor Wat is particularly also fascinating for me because it is tropical. There's a tropical jungle inside and around, and a lot of those trees, they have grown over the old ruins. And even there is one, I believe those are fig trees. They also grow in northern Australia, which is also tropical. So this is all this entire region there. Northern Australia, like Brisbane, and then Philippine Islands, and then Vietnam and Cambodia, and then on the west side is Sri Lanka and Indonesia and Singapore. So I looked at the map, this is that is an equatorial belt there, and there are these gigantic fig trees. I absolutely love those trees, and gosh, I wish I would love to have those type of trees, those enormous trees. I saw a video of a guy in Australia who lives with his dog, very sweet dog, and he was nomadic for a long time and traveled to different places with his motorhome and his dog, even to the United States. And so he finally bought himself a property in northern Australia, where he's from. He's from Australia. And he showed the property, and there is one of these large, humongous fig trees. They actually look like a hand that comes out of the ground, just like that. And with these huge fingers, they're like humongous roots that come all the way out of the ground and then create the trunk. And the trunk is really smooth and light gray. And then all the way in the crown are the leaves and the fruits, and you can live on that. This is like life-sustaining. If you have a tree like this, you can just eat those figs, these lush, amazing figs. We had fig trees in LA, and the people who bought the house right across those fig trees that were growing on the street property, they cut them down. I cannot imagine how someone can cut down fruit trees when they are life-giving and life-sustaining. We used to go there at night and fill our backpacks because that's out there in Marina del Rey. We did this a lot. We would walk our 2 Great Danes at night with our backpacks, and then we would go from one fruit tree to another and just bag our backpacks full of fruits, like blood oranges. I had 2 backpacks full of blood oranges. Now I would be eating blood oranges every day for like several weeks. Or I would be eating these lush, huge hand-sized figs every day. The best tasting figs I've ever eaten in my entire life. My mother, she knew a fruit merchant, and he had top-notch, the best fruits you can possibly get. But these figs and all of these fruits were better than his fruits because they were hand-picked. They were picked ripe from the tree, So you cannot imitate that if you're a fruit merchant and you have to buy the fruit that is not fully ripe and then it ripens later on in the basket as it's being transported. So in order to prevent it from rotting, so they always pick them prematurely, which is not very good. You should eat the fruit completely ripe from the tree. That's how the fruit should be eaten. Okay, and that's how it tastes the absolute best. Nothing can come even near this type of taste. Okay, this is the absolute ultimate. And in Angkor Wat, they have these ruins that are called Tomb Raider ruins, and they even made a movie in there called Tomb Raider, and some kind of sci-fi movie, I believe. I have never watched that film. But there is a fig tree that is enormous, that is completely like a big hand, came there from above and grabbed one of these buildings, just grabbed the whole building like this. That's how it looks like. These roots coming out huge, engulfing the entire building. These roots come up to, I think that these roots, they come out of the ground and extend up to like 20 feet above ground. Yeah. It's amazing. And they literally, they look like a hand like this, and grow all the way, I'm not showing you, and they grow all the way over the house, over the building structure, over that temple, and over all of these ornaments as well. But I hope they will never cut these roots off that tree, because that looks amazing, absolutely amazing. And the tourists love it, and they all take photos of it. That's like the main tourist attraction of this entire place, are those fig trees. It's amazing, an amazing jungle. And gosh, that's my ultimate dream, to one day be able to live in this type of tropical zone, in this tropical belt somewhere. So, and then there is another place deep in the Amazon rainforest that an explorer discovered somewhere in 1914 or something like this. And I'm not showing you. He put a sweater in front of him. That is so incredibly ridiculous. Oh my god. Yeah, but yeah, I love the tropical zone, and then it adds out those ancient ruins of the ET settlements. They really add to this paradise. It's a paradise in the jungle, in the tropical belt. The problem is, because Paul is a naysayer, whatever I suggest, almost everything is like, nay, that's dangerous, nay, that you can't do this, nay, that's human trafficking, nay, there are mosquitoes. But yeah, and obviously I don't have the financial means to get to those places in any way, and then and pay my way through to get citizenship or something. I don't have any money. I have the only money I have is like $80 in my wallet. That's all I have. It's true, I'm not lying. That's all I have. I don't have a bank account anymore. Yeah, I had a nervous breakdown and terminated my bank account in 2020. That's what happened. Yes, and looking back on it, I was in that was the nervous breakdown mental state I was in. And today I would do it differently, so obviously, but at that time, that's where I was at. I was like, that was my way of cutting myself free from my parents. But obviously I needed the money, and now my brother is taking everything. So yeah, it's very sad, all of this. All of this very, very sad. But yeah, it is what it is. I don't have the financial means to get to Angkor Wat. I would love to go there one day before I die and go into that moat water that is around it. There are steps that go into that pool, into that square-shaped pool. Square river shape, like a square river formed all the way around those ancient ruins. And so that would be my main attraction, to go to this pool. And it's like a green pool with real heavy algae growing inside. And I would love to go in there. I don't even know if people are allowed to go in there and go swimming in there. I don't even think they are. But I think I could not resist that. I would have to go in there. I'm so fascinated by that. And oh gosh, I want to see all of that entire place. I want to see that Tomb Raider ruin temple, and I have daydreams of going there and meditating in there, and I would lose a lot of weight walking around there, this entire humongous complex, and just be drinking water all day long, not even eating anything, just be fascinated by all of these ancient ruins, and go to the main temple. And I don't know if I can make it up this entire fleet of stairs, and those are kind of like narrow cut stairs, so I have large feet, so I would have to go up sideways. So I don't know if I can do that, or sideways holding on to the railing or something. And then have to be afraid that I might fall, and then I would literally roll all the way down that slope. That's a little risky for fat people. You get all bruised up. Nah, I don't know if I can make it up those stairs, but I would love to see it. At least be standing there and looking up and admiring it, and be in awe that this was built for, people say it was built for Lord Vishnu, which is a Hindu god. But then again, the question arises, who is Lord Vishnu? Who is that God? Who is that God? The 8 on the side. The blue God, the infinity, the infinite cosmos, incarnated. That's what Lord Vishnu was. Okay. And where did he come from? He came from the sky. Okay. So people thought he's a god, he must be a god because he comes here with technology. They cannot even wrap their heads around it, so he must be a god. But, whether he's a god or not, of course he's a blue god. I call him the blue god, the infinite cosmos. So that is infinity, and that comes, sometimes incarnates, okay, into a living being. And that particular incarnation was that being with blue skin from another star system, okay, from the system, I believe the system Sirius, as they call it. So, because he's very serious always, and he's very seriously concerned for the human species and for human evolution and development. And so maybe they have done something that interrupted the linear or somewhat linear evolutionary path of the human species, and they have interjected their own genes, right, along that way. and they have done some gene splicing, and they have put those zygotes into, or test tube zygotes, morula, into a woman or into an ET woman, and then she gives birth to a hybrid. Okay, and so that's what a lot of people believe. Okay, and for a long time I thought this is insane, and how do they come up with this? But then I got into it and find out, how do people come up with this, right? Find out more, not just be judgmental. Not say, oh, nah, this is flying saucer stuff, I'm not going to watch it. Like Paul always, how does he even find out? How does he even learn what this is all about? He will never find out because he rejects it right up front. But I don't want to do that. So to me, this seems very reasonable, actually. No matter how funny I feel while I say it, because I've been brainwashed to think this is ridiculous to say, and I'm going to be ridiculed for it, right? But it makes sense to me. It makes a lot of sense. So I think they did. They must have done all kinds of gene testing and splicing and experiments and so on, So that's what I believe. And they did it all around the planet. They did it in Egypt, in Abydos, in Giza. They did it in Pumapunku. They did it in other places. I forgot the names now. They are amazing names. Podeng Gadeng, Pomeng Gadong. I forgot. I forgot the name, but amazing names, So like tropical names and Asian names, and amazing names of these fortresses. And these fortresses are all the way around the planet. They're found everywhere. China and Japan. There are places in Serbia, all the way around. And there are places where they don't even know of those places yet. There's one place, there's a pyramid. Where was that again? Somewhere in Russia, I think it was, or Czechoslovakia. There's a pyramid, but it's grown over with plants, with trees also. And scientists are ridiculing anyone who says this is an artificially created pyramid. This is nature. It has formed itself like this, and you're seeing things, and these people get ridiculed into the ground, and nobody wants to be ridiculed, and they don't want to lose their school funding and their project funding, and so they're very careful in how they word themselves. But then there are people, they don't let go of this. They say this is a pyramid. This cannot be happening in nature because the angles are in absolute precision. How can nature create something with that absolute precision, geometric precision? It doesn't. It never does. It can sometimes resemble it, but it never has absolute, total mathematical precision. And this pyramid out there in Czechoslovakia or somewhere, overgrown by pine trees, that looks like, over time, it weathers, and there's dust sedimentations, then there are mosses, then there's more dust and more debris and more stuff. It just accumulates on it, right? Until there are trees growing on it. So, and that also tells us something about how long this has been there, okay? So, and how long this dates back. It could date back 100 million years back, okay? When there are large trees growing on it, then you know it dates back that far. I mean, it could not be newer than that, because it takes a long time for that much debris to build up, particularly on very smooth, like angular surfaces like this. So it must have been through a lot of time, and also eventually corrosion, even on the hardest of surfaces, if it's that long of a time span. But 100 million years ago, 100%, the animal on our lineage, our ancestor at that time, was this small. Okay, I'm not exaggerating. It was a dinosaur, it was a reptile, it was an animal that was able to hide in little caves and little creeks and crevices, and it was able to hide there from larger predators and from the weather and so on. Okay, and then very gradually from there it evolved into dinosaurs with hair, that were a little bit larger. And then you can see, when you look at a rat, for example, look closely at a rat or at an opossum, okay? You can clearly see that this animal resembles a reptile, okay? This animal is a mammal, but you see the rudimentation in the shape of the body, particularly in the tail, with little ring-shaped formations, like the dinosaurs had. A naked tail with ring-shaped formations around the tail. The rudiments of scales. I'm not making this up. This is truth. Okay? So those are mammals. Okay? The opossum is actually a kangaroo type of animal. It's a marsupial. I think that's the opossum is the only marsupial here in the United States, as far as I am informed. That there may be others, okay, but there are not very many. In Australia, they have a lot of those animals. So a lot of marsupials. Kangaroos are marsupials, large marsupials. So marsupials are those that give birth to basically still an embryo, and the opening for that birth canal goes up or into a pouch, not like the regular mammal does. So it goes into it feeds like into a pouch, and then this little embryo, I don't know how early they give birth to this, that little embryo then stays in this pouch, and is still, I think, is still connected to an umbilical cord in that pouch. And so a lot of people, when the mother dies or gets hit by a car, which is an absolute tragedy, then animal rights people and good Samaritans come in, and they pick up the baby out of the pouch, and they feed the baby with formula, and they bring the baby up to health and give the baby a chance to grow and become an adult kangaroo or adult wombat or other animal. But the opossum that's a marsupial here, and they look like very large rats. They have they have a Mickey Mouse tip of the nose that is big, very big and fleshy. And they look absolutely gorgeous. They don't live very long. They live only 2 years or 3 years. That's their lifespan. It's real tragic, because some people adopt those and then they lose them. after too old age, after just 2 or 3 years. And it must be awful sad. People must be crying and crying and crying. So yeah, they love their opossums, very sweet animals. I had an opossum baby on my chest once, but Paul said we can't take that with us. We had the dogs, and they wouldn't leave that baby alone. So I had to put the opossum baby, but I touched it with gloves. I had gardening gloves, but I put the opossum baby back under that where I found the baby. I think that was the last baby that was there, actually. I hope that, we can only hope that the mother came back and took the baby onto her back. That's what they do. They grab them by the neck and they put them on their backs. And then they carry them around. So I hope that the mother came back for the last baby there. But they're very docile and they don't even bite. And you can clearly see those animals and rats. They're related, and they are related to dinosaurs. Okay, they're still related. It's still visible that we're all related to dinosaurs. Yeah, but with them, you can see it in the phenotype, in the outer appearance. You can see the resemblance to early dinosaurs on our lineage, and that makes a lot of sense, because those are the rudimentary animals that are like markers, if you look at this type of evolution. They're current, present time marker animals that show you how these things have evolved. Okay, so, and they evolved from the reptile, so real thick, long tail with scales and rings. Then the scales became pores and it became smoother, the skin. Then hair started to grow, and so this is very gradual evolution, right? So then they became rat type of animals, and they kept the tail because the tail was useful, because they went into trees to hide from larger animals. The tail was useful for navigation and also for holding onto branches, for equilibrium and all of that. And for the opossums too, I have seen opossum family walking on a very narrow wooden fence one time in LA. And they didn't fall. They knew exactly how to walk with the tail. The tail was going sideways like this. The tail is sort of like a navigation tool, and equilibrium keeper. And so, yeah, then they became opossum type of animals, but the opossum, of course, and the rat, they are side branches, but you can approximately see from their shapes how these animals have evolved. Okay. And then from there they became arboreal, which is tree born and tree climbing, tree living. They don't even go down because it's dangerous. So they stay in trees, they live in trees, they become more and more agile as they live in the trees. They grow very gradually into lemurs. Okay, there's an entire continent called Lemuria that is out there I believe in the Indian Ocean, that was flooded. And so some scientists believe that is really where the main animals have evolved on our lineage, which are obviously the entire lemur spectrum of animals. Many branched out sideways, of course, but there are lemurs on our lineage. And then they found a fossil they called Eta, which was found in Germany actually. So probably, I don't know if they can really say that it was only Lemuria or Africa or a tropical zone, because they found this lemur fossil in a German. I don't know why my eyes are itching. I also have to turn the video off, it's all way too long. They found this amazing fossil of a lemur that is exactly on the human lineage. Okay, that's one of the missing links. But that's not when they did the gene splicing. They did the gene splicing much later, when the human lineage had already evolved to the level of a even pre-Neanderthal, but of a lineage of very, very rudimentary hunters and gatherers that had a very ape-like mouth like this. I mean, the jaw was still very, very forward. And they called them monkey people, the ETs. So, and they even depicted those, they were very rudimentary. They did not have this face that we have today. And, I mean, among us humans, we are obviously, there are races of people where the jaw is stronger and more protruded. And I find it very beautiful, because I like that. And I'm not that much of a fan of the grandmother in a video game she has, the mouse goes in and she looks like her teeth are missing, which is the case with me. It's very German, this like a jaw that goes in, sort of, and I was never proud of that. I always was ashamed of it. I've always felt bad about it. I felt like that's ugly, so my whole life. And I was jealous of my black girlfriend so much, so jealous. So, but I know that they don't see it that way. The other ones, everyone thinks that the grass is greener on the other side, One time I went to a beauty makeup tutorial in LA, and there's this Middle Eastern girl sitting next to me. And we put makeup on, and she looks at me and I look at her, and she has a sour look on her face. And I say to her, "You are beautiful." And she's like, "What?" She was shocked that I would say that. I said, You're beautiful. Look at your mouth. What a beautiful, large, big mouth and jaw. And that's exactly what she doesn't like, And then she said, "I guess we always find ourselves ugly and the other one pretty." She said that, and she recognized that. And I said, yeah, that's tragic, that it is like that. It shouldn't be like this. So, but at that time, when the first ET settlers came, I don't know, and that must have been, or now the very first settlers, I think they came during the Jurassic, and they didn't do gene splicing with those animals. The very first ancestors, or the very first reptiles that gradually became mammals. So no, they didn't. So they waited. So they kept coming back in intervals of 5,000 years. So they kept coming back. And they said that the settlement in the Brazilian rainforest, in the Amazon rainforest, that one must be one of the very oldest ones, the very first ones that was the place that ETs visited during the Jurassic, somewhere 100 million years ago or something. And then they kept coming back in intervals of specific time frames. And Dolores Cannon, she wrote about this. And she said she had people under hypnosis. And they had memories in hypnosis of their past lives. And some of these people said that they were ETs in past lives that were called the keepers of the garden. And they were literally the gardeners of what's growing here on Earth. So, and they even claimed and said that the very first amoebas or amino acids were actually planted here as sort of an ET experiment to see what would happen, But I don't know if that's true or not, because scientists have recreated the first amino acid that was able to zip itself into two, gathering the components from its mineral soup environment. So, and those are the first building blocks of life. But Dolores Cannon says that the people she had under hypnosis claimed that some of those claimed that they have been the original seeding gardeners, where they put this particular amino acid into some ponds, some warm spring ponds, and they wanted to see what happens, how this would evolve. And then they kept coming back in intervals to check on them, and then see that things are taking the right turn, and that the animals aren't destroying this planet, and they can't until they have enough brain matter to do it, as is the case right now, with our civilization. We're right at the brink of destroying our planet and ourselves. And this is a very, very pivotal time right now. That's why I think it is really necessary for the ETs to come back and do something and help, and something has to happen. And they used to do it through floods, either floods or ice ages, something like that. But that's very cruel and very brutal. I wonder if they can come and do something in a different way, maybe with a virus, so that the good people don't die and the bad people don't die a gruesome death. So they'll get a virus and fall asleep, something like this. That's what I wish for. But anyway, I have to turn the video off. Take care.